Hello and welcome to The Sharper Edge with Betty Parker. I am so happy that you decided to stop by for episode number 7, where we will be talking about betrayal. So, we've done all the foundational work. We have talked about various styles of people and what their preferences are. We've talked about our various behaviors and the things that we need in order to be successful. We talked about how to build connections with one another as we have so many things that are in common but also so many differences. So now that we've talked through what much of that looks like and identified some things about ourselves, I hope you have become just a teeny bit more self aware. I hope you've been able to do a little bit of people reading so that you can see other folks in their element, try to understand who they are and how they are. And more importantly, how do you build connections and relationships with people who are unlike you? And so, just going back and thinking through what we've discussed, I introduced you to several different types of people so that you can get a little bit of a little bit of a demonstration and a view of what that looks like in real time, and to have them tell you about who they are and how they are, and then for you to be able to identify with one of those particular styles. So hopefully we pulled all of that together for you. It's starting to take shape. You can see the bigger picture and then fit in the pieces. What is it about us that we need to do differently? What is it about my relationship with somebody else who I might work with or live with or befriend that makes that relationship stronger and better? And if it's not as good as it can be, what more do we need to do to make it a stronger, more viable relationship that will be long lasting? We're looking for staying power when it comes to the relationships we have. So that's what this is all about. But we know in order to do that, we are going to run into some challenges at times. It's just the fact that it's natural for us to have differences of opinions about things and how we approach things simply because we are different. And because we are not carbon copies of each other, we are likely to collide at times, to have a little bit of a tiff or a skirmish because we're feeling very passionately about what we believe in. And we want the other side to see our side, not always to agree with us, but to at least just respect our opinions and our views on things. And that's what's so hard. I'm finding that nowadays, especially as I go on social media and I look at how people interact with each other, how they talk to each other, how they listen to each other's opinions, I'm finding that there's very little listening going on. There are a lot of people trying to assert their own opinions and pretty much shove it down the throats of others who are in their circles. So we see a lot of brokenness that occurs there. We see a lot of breaking of relationships because people aren't willing to accept each other's differences. We're not willing to accept others' viewpoints. We're not willing to listen with understanding or at least with curiosity so that we can not always challenge what somebody says, but understand what another person says. In this very volatile world we live in right now, and especially with so much information being delivered, a lot of it which is inaccurate, a lot of it which is conspiratorial, a lot of it that is not evidence-based, but just people coming up with their own views and pretty much expecting people to just follow it because they do. We get a lot of pushback. We get a lot of clashes that I see. And so I do a lot of observing. If any of you have seen me on your page, because I know some of y'all go back and look at the analytics, y'all are trying to figure out who blocked you, who deleted you, who, you had something to say about you, whatever it is y'all go looking for in there, who looked at your page but didn't say anything on it, who didn't like something that you said. I see all of those posts, right? I am an observer. I don't feel like I have to comment on everything I see. I'm just there to, engage with those who I want to engage with, look at some things that I find interesting, some things that I find comedic and I can receive that, some things that I find informative. I also just like seeing what people do in their lives. I love going on vacations with people, right? They go out and they share so much of their vacations, and I feel like I'm on those vacations with them. I like to see people succeed. I love all the great announcements about accomplishments that people have made. And that's what social media is supposed to be about. It's about being social, but it's become antisocial over the years. It's lost its way. The true purpose for what this was first designed for, and people did it and used it the right way initially, but the more popular it got, the more people started being themselves. And we come to understand how as humans, we can be brutal at times. We can be treacherous. We are not fair with each other. We are very judgmental. We don't hold ourselves accountable enough. We wag fingers in other people's faces and become very accusatory. And we have lost what it is to build connections and relationships. So, my purpose is to bring us back to what that should look like and help us to navigate through some of the tougher parts of being connected to other human beings, to come back and be human ourselves and to see people as human, not expecting perfection because we ourselves are not perfect, yet we hold other people to a level of perfection, for lack of a better word, but to a level that we cannot even achieve. It's too high, it's too lofty, it's unrealistic. And so we see a lot of criticism that comes from people who can't do any better than the people they criticize. I hope we'll get past that. I hope we will mature in who we are. I hope we'll get the bitterness and the resentment out of our hearts and our minds and be more accepting and tolerant of one another so that we can actually indulge in conversation and enjoy each other's company. That should be the goal of the day. All right. So, with all of that being said, I want to launch into a people issue that I think is important when it comes to building connections to people and relationships with one another. And the one I'm going to talk about today is betrayal. Betrayal. That's a big one, right? And a hard one. Yes, it is. But I think it bears having a conversation because we've all been betrayed at some point. I actually chose this topic because as a Bible study teacher, I'm a Christian for anybody who doesn't know that. And I do teach Bible study and Sunday school at my church. Well, in Bible study this past week, we talked about the ultimate betrayal. And if you're a Christian, you know what I'm talking about. It's between Judas and Jesus. And even if you're not a Christian, many people know it's used in pop culture at times when we feel betrayed by somebody. That whole 30 pieces of silver comes up. So we know that Judas betrayed Jesus and it cost Jesus his life. So in our discussion, I asked everybody in the room, have you ever been betrayed? And of course, there was this chorus of yes, 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 I've been betrayed. Then I went a little bit further and I asked them, have you ever betrayed anyone? And surprisingly, they admitted, many of them in the room said, yeah, yeah, I did. And I thought that was interesting simply because I didn't expect anybody to cop to doing something like betraying somebody. Now, one aspect that was brought to my attention that I had not considered was betraying somebody to the benefit of them. And what this means is, let's say we have somebody who needs an intervention. They are struggling with something in their lives. Let's just say addiction, and they've betrayed their trust. Let me get this together. They have betrayed the trust that they were trying to build or once had with someone else. And those, the folks that they broke promises to, they made commitments to, they said they were going to do better. They said they were going to, stop the whatever the addiction is. And as much as they tried, they could not. And they did a lot of things. I've heard of people who have been addicted and they have stolen from family members. They've manipulated and they have taken and made promises that they didn't keep and just got into a whole lot of trouble and basically drained the people who cared about them most. And eventually those people said, no more, I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore. And it caused, quite a bit of a rift between, these people who still love each other, but just can't deal with the harshness of the addiction, all the things that come from the addiction. So, maybe there has to be an intervention. There's something drastic that has to happen because this person is going to do harm to themselves because they've already done quite a bit of harm to others. And as a result, family members or friends say, hey, we need to stage this intervention. So they have to manipulate, they have to lie, they have to do a lot of dishonest things in order to get that person into a place where they can receive the treatment and the help that they need. So that's what was indicated in the response about have you ever betrayed anyone? Somebody says, yeah, sometimes you have to do it for the greater good. And I respect that. I don't have an issue with that one at all. But what we're going to focus on is the betrayal that comes that's most common. And it's when somebody does something that breaks the trust that they have with someone who they're supposed to be in a relationship with. Whether it's, let me just say, when I'm saying relationship, I'm saying this is just, a connection that we have to another person. Maybe it's family, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a boss employee, a connection. maybe it's a friendship. I mean, we're talking about people who should have trust between them. And maybe they did have it at some point, but for whatever reason, that trust has now broken down because there's something that's going on in the background that drove them to a place where they didn't care enough about what they were doing. And I'm talking about the person who is the betrayer. That person didn't care enough about the other person that they were betraying. And so they took certain actions, unwise actions that compromised the trust or even broke the trust that the two parties had. And so I want to go because you may have seen, I'm going to go look up the definition, the dictionary.com definition or Webster's dictionary definition of what betray is or betrayal is. And it's defined as to expose one's country, a group, or a person to danger by treacherously giving information to an enemy. All right. And yeah, we have people who are traitors. We know about traitors that have occurred. And I mean, most every country has them, right? Somebody's selling state secrets. They're selling out their country for money, right? Personal gain. Or you might have a situation where there is a romantic relationship, maybe even a marriage situation. And one of the parties, one of the partners betrays the other through cheating, through some type of extramarital or extra relationship with someone else. Maybe it is a boss and employee situation where the boss is standing in the way of their employee advancing within the organization because that boss feels insecure. They believe their employee is going to take their job. So they are a stumbling block. They are a barrier to that person's success. And as a result of that, they pretty much got that person's, you know, career, their future under their thumb, and they're just not allowing them the opportunity to grow because they feel like they would easily be displaced. So there's all kinds of ways that betrayal shows up in relationships, and it's hurtful. It's really hurtful to the person who has to endure. So yeah, we see this occur, and this whole idea of giving information to an enemy, that's not the only way to betray somebody. We just talked about it, cheating and lying and being dishonest. So I have my own personal definition of what betrayal is. And basically, I try to just sum up, not that the dictionary one is wrong, but I just think there's a way to sum it all up because there's so many ways in which we've been and can betray ourselves or allow ourselves to be betrayed or even to betray somebody else. You can be a recipient or the target of betraying or betrayal, and you can also be the perpetrator of it. And we're going to look at both aspects of that. So for the most part, I'm going to talk about if you are the target of it, if someone has betrayed you. And then we'll move into what happens if you're the one that's doing the betraying. But what I want us to think about is, this very short, this concise definition that was created by me, but what it all means. So for me, betrayal is the dishonest, keep that in mind, first big word, the dishonest and selfish approach to personal gain. The dishonest and selfish approach to personal gain. Because most often, what I see, based on people who have shared their stories with me, there is something that the betrayer is getting out of betraying a person they supposedly care for or is responsible to or has some kind of connection with. They don't think about the impact of their betrayal on the other side. That's why I also call it selfish. They're looking at only what they can get out of it. So if we go to the 3 different types of betrayal that I admitted into evidence, that's what I wanted to say. I am not an attorney, but the 2 or 3 that I just mentioned, let's say, for instance, a cheating spouse or cheating, boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever, right? But somebody who's cheating in the relationship, whoever they're cheating with, right? The betrayer is getting something out of that extra relationship, whatever it is, whether it's money, whether it's, some satisfaction, physical satisfaction, companionship, or whatever it is they think they're not getting out of their current relationship, whatever it is, but they're benefiting in this. The selfishness is if you are not happy in the relationship that you're in, just let that person go. Don't cause harm to them, further harm to them. It's hard enough to break up as it is, but don't cause further harm by cheating on them and betraying them and lying to them. Because remember, the other part of that definition is dishonesty. it is very difficult not to be dishonest when you are betraying someone. Betraying requires a lot of lying and cheating and hiding and being cunning and stealthy in the background and all those things in order to, and it's very much premeditated in order to, pull the wool over somebody's eyes, right? So we got to think about how much work, effort, and energy it takes for somebody to think about uh, getting over on somebody in some way. And keep in mind, this is somebody you're supposed to care for. So when we look at that, personal gain is at the core of what these people are trying to get. So if that's somebody who's cheating, let's take the example of the boss. Their personal gain is to either maintain where they are, to maintain the level of management or leadership that they're in, and to block anybody else who might come in and replace them in that area. Now, where they're cutting themselves short is perhaps they can be elevated to a higher level, but they're so busy trying to protect what they have that they would stand in the way of anybody else who is coming up. Now, I'm just going to say this as an aside. If you are doing your job well, you don't have to worry about anybody coming and taking it away from you. Professional jealousy is probably one of the worst offenses in a workplace because people tend to stand in the way not only of other people's progress, but of their own. And that jealousy can explode into so many different aspects of bullying and lying and manipulation as well, getting in the way of a person being able to learn more and to grow in their position. A big part of what a leader has to do is to grow somebody in their career. But if you're so busy worried about somebody doing better than you as an employee, first of all, step up your game and you don't have to worry about that. But if you're so worried about them doing better than you, then you are the one who's falling short, not them. You're the one who needs to grow. You're the one who needs to find ways to build your skill level because nobody should be able to come in and take over what you have done unless you become stagnant in your growth. And so there's a lot of, people getting in the way of other people's progress. And betrayal becomes a big part of how folks can hamper what other people need in order to be, fully developed in their careers and successful in their careers. So, get out of people's way. I keep finding that another common thread among betrayers is that they're not willing to do what's necessary in order to be better themselves. So what they do is try to find a way to get, I don't know, just to get past or get over on somebody else. If the people they are betraying are likely people who are trusting and honest with them, who are loving and thoughtful and caring about them, who are considerate when it comes to them. And I'm talking about when it's just really the betrayer's fault in this situation. And so the other side is just totally clueless of what's happening in front of them. Ultimately, you can only betray somebody for so long and the red flags start coming up and you're not as slick as you think you are. And eventually the person finds out, which is even more hurtful because this may have been going on for quite a while. And then they start questioning everything about, why did I miss that? So that leads me into talking about what the impact of betrayal is. And so first of all, when somebody's been betrayed by somebody they really, really cared for, and especially if it's in the family, sometimes betrayal starts at a very, very young age. There are kids who feel traumatized by the actions of their family members because they trusted the people who were supposed to care for them. Let's say their parents or their guardians who were supposed to protect them and to take care of them and provide for them. And they made many, many promises to them as children, and they never kept those promises. And this child has learned not to trust the folks that are supposed to be their protectors and providers. So as this child grows up into adulthood, they have to now struggle with a lack of trust and ability to trust others in their lives. They bring that into every relationship that they ever have. So people who want to build connections with them, who want to build a lasting friendship and a lasting relationship with them, struggle. They have a hard time really reaching them deeply because that person has so many guards up because of what's happened to them in the past, that their current relationships cannot thrive. They cannot be good, not fully, not to the extent that they should be, because this person doesn't give themselves the freedom to trust anymore. And the person who can really love them and really take care of them and make them feel whole a lot of times, they don't get the opportunity to do that because of somebody else's past offenses towards the person who has been betrayed. So now the good and loving person will have to suffer the consequences of the sins of the person before them. And everybody that the person who was betrayed, everybody they come across in their lives as they continue to grow, as they continue to grow older, let me just say that, um, they are held at arm's length. They are not allowed to enjoy the fullest fruits of what this relationship can deliver. And so it becomes a sticking point, and it actually becomes very tragic, because there's a freedom you have in a good and loving and trusting relationship. And you can't, if there's always that question mark in the back of your mind, if there's always waiting for the other shoe to drop because of what somebody did to you years and years ago. So the impact is long lasting if you don't figure out how to get through and get over situations when you have been betrayed. Another impact is just having guilt and shame about what occurred. A lot of times we look at ourselves and say, how could we have allowed that to happen? Why did I not know that they were doing this to me? I'm embarrassed that people have found out how I got over, or somebody got over on me. I'm embarrassed that I failed at this situation, and not on my own doing, because of what somebody else did. I look like a sucker in this, right? Does anybody ever you still use those words? Is sucker still a word, or still a current word? But y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, people feel embarrassed because they felt like they should have been smarter. They should have known more, right? People say it all the time. I can't believe I was so stupid to believe what they said. And especially if you have put your faith in somebody multiple times. And maybe it's not just the same person over and over again, but the same type of person. And you keep getting let down over and over again. And so, yeah, that's why it's hard to trust the next person coming along, but you have to stay open, because here's what we don't need to do: paint everybody with the same brush, because not everybody is out to get you. You'll end up kind of paranoid, worrying about what people could do to you, that you're not even allowing your heart to be open enough to receive the one who really can do something good for you. In order to really be successful and to enjoy what comes from truth and honesty within a relationship, fun and excitement and common interest and companionship and all those things that make up a good relationship, um, you know commonalities and the sharing of passions and things along that line. It's really hard to feel secure in those when we're always waiting for somebody else to do what the other person's before you have done. So you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You got to be willing to take the risks of getting hurt in order to enjoy the fullness of what a good and lasting relationship can offer to you. Relationships are built over time. Trust is built along with the relationship. So you've got to give yourself time. You've got to give the other person time to prove themselves to you, to say you can trust them. And if you allow that to happen, then you would allow yourself to finally get to what you're looking for, what you're seeking, in communion with somebody else. And it's there, it's out there for the taking. It's just that we sometimes let one or two people or one or two bad events in our lives, just squash everything that we can possibly have. And then sometimes another impact that we have, or betrayal has, on a person who has been betrayed, is a lack of self-confidence. It messes with our self-esteem. We sometimes will question, why do people keep doing this to us or me? What is it about me that allows people to feel like they can treat me this way? Why do I often feel so devalued in my relationships, based on how people have treated me? What is it about me that they don't like, or that they feel they can misuse? What am I giving off? You start questioning yourself and your own value. And in actuality, it might not always be you. I mean, think about the person who's doing it. Don't take responsibility for the dirt that they have done to you. Okay. Are there some things you might need to do in order to keep your eyes open and to be vigilant about, you know, what signs and symptoms that can come when you are allowing yourself to be used by somebody? Yes. We should all do that, not just those of us who've been, because basically every one of us have had an experience where we feel like we've been betrayed. So yeah, you have to be smarter. You have to pull on experiences, but not be paranoid. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody should approach life cautiously, right? But not so cautious that you prevent yourself from getting the most out of the life that you're trying to build for yourself. And then there's trauma that's associated with betrayal. That trauma can come from, as I mentioned earlier, be trusting somebody who should have had your best interest in mind. And these are usually from really close relationships, familial relationships. Remember I talked about parents or guardians, maybe a husband or a wife, a spouse who you thought, not only that they had your best interest in mind, but it's not just cheating. It could be, them hurting you physically, them hurting you verbally. There's a lot of verbal abuse that can go on. Maybe it's not even what they did to you directly, but something indirectly they did to another family member. You thought you could trust them with that family member, or you thought you could trust them in helping you support that family member, and that commitment wasn't there. Maybe it's a friend who betrayed your confidence. You thought you could go to them and tell them about something that was very private and would be kept between the two of you. And the next thing you know, they've gone and shared it with other people, and it's made its way back to you, and not in the same form in which it was shared. So, you know how gossip happens. And whatever the original story was gets distorted the more it gets told. And now your reputation is being, disparaged, or people are looking at you sideways because of, somebody talking too much, somebody you thought you could trust. So there's a trauma that gets attached to that, right? Especially if it's something that's really harmful. It can cause harm to you from a physical standpoint, your reputation, quite possibly, from an emotional standpoint, from all kinds of different ways in which you identify what matters in your life in terms of your personal values. So betrayal is a hard and harsh thing to go through in life. And we need to figure out, how do we get through it so we can get over it. So now I want to just move us into what are some potential solutions to it. So one of the things I always try to encourage people to do is not to get so fast to the get over it part. Because what I find, if somebody's giving somebody one or two chances, some people will tell you, you only got one chance with me, and they will cut you off, and they're not dealing with you anymore. Now, we all have lapses in judgment at times in our lives, and we do stupid things. And we might betray somebody not intentionally, but just because we didn't think something through, or there was a moment where we did become selfish or greedy, and we just wanted what we wanted in that moment, but it wasn't to hurt the person that's going to be betrayed in this. And so, yeah, but some people give you one shot and one shot only, and you blow it, it's over with. And I think that's a little bit unfair, because we all fall short. Even the person who has been betrayed, it's highly likely they've done something similar or done something else to cause harm to somebody else. So they're not perfection. They make mistakes too, and that's what we don't often challenge ourselves to do. We don't often do personal accountability. We want to hold everybody else accountable for what they've done wrong, but we don't like to do that inward look and say, I've fallen short at times myself. So we just have to think about, rather than getting over it, let's figure out how we get through it. And one way to get through it is to grieve the situation that occurred. You can grieve that situation. You have to sit with your feelings. If you have been hurt, if you are angry, if you are embarrassed, whatever the feeling is that you're having, or feelings, might be just a whole host of feelings you go through. And when you grieve something, yeah, there are all kinds of steps you go through the grief process, right? I heard there are 5 stages. Sometimes I hear there are 7 stages, but nonetheless, you have to go through these various feelings in the moment when this situation occurs. So grieve it. Give yourself time to think it through. Give yourself time to roll over in your mind what happened. Now, not to sit and beat yourself up, but to say, what is this? What happened? Why did it happen? What could have been the cause for it? What part did I play in it? There's so many different things that you need to think about so that you'll learn from it in the next situation, but also to just go through what you're feeling in the moment. Suppressing your feelings is not going to resolve the issue at all. In fact, that suppression is going to bubble up to the surface at various times in your life. And that's when other people are going to have to pay the consequences for what you have struggled with or are struggling with, because of the residual effects of some trauma that's happened, as a result of some betrayal. And so it helps if you can talk it out too. Find somebody you really can trust, because hopefully you got a big enough of a circle. It's okay to have a tight knit circle, but have a circle nonetheless. So if one person does betray you, you have somebody else who understands and you can go to them and talk it through. If you can't trust anybody within your circle, or you don't want people to know because you feel embarrassed by it or whatever is going on, find a counselor or a therapist. There's nothing wrong with that. A third party who has no connection. They can remain very neutral and objective. And because they're trained, they're usually really good listeners, and they can ask you questions to kind of, delve deeper into whatever the situation is, and hopefully help you to feel better because you talked it out and come to some sort of, you know, conclusion about what next steps are for you. And so, another big part of dealing with betrayal, and this is probably one of the most difficult parts, is forgiveness. Forgiveness. Sometimes we have to extend forgiveness to the people who do us wrong. I'll go back to when I said there's sometimes, just a, a singular incident that might occur. And instead of just cutting that person off, having a conversation with them. I said, talk it out. Yeah, you can talk it out with a third party, but the better person to talk it out with is the person who betrayed you. Because all those questions that we roll over in our minds when we're trying to figure out what in the heck happened, go to them and ask them, why did you do it? What drove you to this? Why do you feel like you had to do such a thing? What was your thinking the moment when you did it related to me? Is there anything you feel like I did that drove you to this, right? Why didn't you feel like you could have a different way out of this situation if you held me responsible for something you thought I did that was a personal affront to you? I mean, there's so many questions you can ask them and get straight answers, quite possibly, hopefully. Sometimes people don't even know why they do what they do, but nonetheless, it's worth a conversation between you so you can talk about, if there is space for forgiveness in this. And if so, what at the end of it will y'all agree to ensure that this doesn't happen again? What are some consequences you're going to put in place if it does happen again? So it requires a conversation between you and the person who betrayed you. And if you can get that, but forgiveness really is for you. So often, we're looking at, what somebody has done to us, and we hold on to the anger that comes out of that, the pain that comes out of that. And until we can, and I'm talking about the getting through part before we get to the getting over part. The getting through part is finding a place to allow yourself to heal. And a big part of that healing comes from releasing whatever the negative energy and the negative feelings that you have about the situation. Just releasing that and getting that out of your system. Okay. So grieve it, go through that, whatever period it takes you to, just kind of put everything out there and feel the hard and harsh and angry and painful feelings that come from the betrayal. But then also healing must take place as a result of that as well. So you just start letting the negative stuff dissipate and then allow the better, more positive and more powerful and strengthening feelings that you might need to have in order to get past, what happened to you. And it's really necessary that we go through the process so that you aren't leaping so far to the end that you become hardened by the experiences you've had in your life, that you don't become unfair in your treatment of other people because of those experiences in your life. And you can look back on it and not relive the pain over and over again, because the healing will be, I think, more complete and more solid if we take the time to go through the grieving process. And then finally, if you have a serial uh, betrayer in your life, somebody who does these things to you multiple times, and I'm talking about a lot of times, where you have forgiven as often as you could, but there just comes to a point where you know you're just being used. Well, there are times when you're just going to have to say, I do have to cut ties with this person. This is not good for me. It's not healthy in my for my mental state and my emotional state. It's not a healthy relationship. It will never be a healthy relationship because this person doesn't care about me. You know, we don't hurt the people we care for. They should have much more value to us in our lives that we don't want to cause harm to them. But if you find yourself not caring if you hurt somebody or not, when you become so selfish about what you need and what you want, I'm going back to my definition. It is the selfish and dishonesty approach to personal gain. So when you are so inner focused about what you need and what you need only, and you don't care who you have to step on to get what you need, you don't care who you have to hurt, or you just minimize the feelings of the person who you know you've built a relationship with, then it's time to let that go. I mean, your season is over together, and there's somebody else who's awaiting you who can fully appreciate you as a human being who has feelings, who wants to be mentally well and emotionally well. And you can't have that with someone who will constantly betray you. Now, as I wrap this up, one of the things I mentioned earlier on was talking about what if you are the one who's doing the betraying. So you can take a lot of what I said about being the recipient or the target of a betrayal and just kind of turn all of that on yourself and ask yourself the questions before you even do what you are going to do. Why would I do this to somebody I care for? uh, is what I'm going to do going to cause harm to somebody, and not just to that person, but to whomever else is connected to that person? I'll go back to the cheating example. You know, when a person cheats on their mate, they're not just cheating on their mate, they're cheating on everybody connected. If it is a marriage situation and children are involved, then you're not just cheating on your spouse, you're cheating on your children as well. You're cheating on the family members that are associated. You're cheating on, and I'm going to use it from the male perspective, and where there is a husband and a wife situation. You know, in a wedding, oftentimes the traditional wedding, the father walks the bride down the aisle, right? And then the groom comes and meets the father. And the father hands his daughter over to the groom, basically saying, hey, listen, I've done everything I could for my daughter. I've raised her to be the woman she is today, the woman who will ultimately be your wife. I've taught her and prepared her for this very moment. You get the benefits of all of that. And so now I'm entrusting my daughter's care to you. I'm entrusting her safety, her security, everything that I've been able to give her. I entrust that to you now as the head of your own household. And plus, you will give her more love and a different kind of love than what I could give. And then as a groom, you walk up in front of everybody in that church, all of the family and friends that you've invited, the pastor and God himself, and you recite vows and you make a commitment to be with that woman no matter what for the rest of your life. And too often these days, people are breaking these vows. They are forgetting that it's not just them in a relationship anymore. They're forgetting that they made a commitment to last through the good times and the bad times, sickness and health, rich and poor, all those things where we say we're going to stick it out no matter what. But somehow people fall short and say, well, no, in this particular instance, I need more. And I'm going to go get it, even inside of my relationship, even if it's damaging to my relationship. And so, you know, you have this cheating that may occur because it is selfish. And to cheat, you have to be dishonest. But the goal is what? Personal gain. So that's what betrayal is inside of a marriage or a committed relationship. In a long-term committed relationship too, we see people, you know, who will have gone, you know, the miles, but they haven't really done the work on the inside. They're just hanging on through a lot of these. So, you know, if you're the person who is causing the issues, if you're the person who is the one who is betraying, you need to stop for a minute before you do that action and ask yourself why you're doing it, what's driving it, what are the alternatives to this rather than doing something that will cause harm to the person you're supposed to care for? And then is there another solution? You know, what else could you do? what did the alternatives look like? And what else could you do besides cause harm to, even if it means walking away from your relationship or ending it? Or I don't know, there's so many other ways in which you can fix this rather than just to ignore the feelings and to cause pain for somebody else. And are you being selfish? Are you looking for personal gain in this? You have to ask yourself those tough questions. And then once you can really figure out what it is that you're doing, um, then you have to, I hope you'll be convicted, really deep within you to say, this isn't right. And I know when it's happened to me, and I'm the person who is, I'm still speaking from the perspective of the person who is the betrayer. So likely the person who is the betrayer has had at some point in their lives a betrayal situation as well. And they need to go back and think on what it made them feel like when they were the one who somebody broke trust with. And when they can do that and realize the pain that it caused them, hopefully they'll say, I don't want to cause that same pain for somebody else after what I went through. And because they can have that kind of empathy, maybe they can have compassion on the person and figure out a different way. All right. And I know this sounds like a lot of people who really care for each other, where trust has been built, where there are friendships and family relationships and all of that. Right. But from a work perspective, or let's say, just an associate or somebody who's not quite as close to you, still, there needs to be a modicum of respect for that individual. Um, it, some rationale behind what needs to happen to keep a relationship intact so you can work together or live in the same neighborhood together or volunteer together or go to the same religious organization. I'm trying to say, I don't want to say a church because not everybody goes to church. Some people go to temple, some people go to the hall, some people go to the mosque, whatever your space you're in when it comes to your faith and your belief, wherever, where you worship together. I guess that's what I say in a nutshell. All of those things, these may not be people you are close with, but they are people you regularly run into. And they might not have the same close, really dedicated um, relationship that you would have with somebody who's in your family or who you are dating or married to. But nonetheless, the same rules apply. Think about the pain you could still cause somebody by saying something or doing something that would be a personal affront to them. So, with all that being said, I hope you will think this through, whether you're the target of it or the perpetrator of a betrayal situation, and you will find a way to challenge yourself to be a better person. That's what we all need to do. Challenge ourselves to be a better person so that we're not slipping into our human nature that can sometimes be brutal, that can sometimes be unfair towards others, that can sometimes be really self centered. And that's what breaks us off from one another. And this is why there's so much, our relationships become fractious. People become these big, it becomes this contentious situation between them. And folks walk around angry all day, just hurt in their feelings, untrusting, and they treat everybody according to what they're feeling on the inside. It's all almost as if we cannot decipher who is our enemy and who is our friend. And even for those who don't fit in either one of those categories, we just kind of by default get treated as an enemy because the approach oftentimes is one of, suspicion and, I'm going to get you before you can get to me, or even vengeance, right? So, just think through it. I'm interested in hearing your story. I appreciate you stepping in and stopping by and listening to what I'm sharing. I hope it makes you think a little bit about what your experiences have been like and what the cause has been and the effect has been and what you've um, chosen to do to try to get through and to overcome those things. I hope it sparks a good enough conversation between you and somebody else who you might need to have this tough conversation with. And then just drop whatever you need to in the comment section. I'm open to hearing from you. Um, what's been, your experience? How did you handle it? How did it make you feel? What are you doing about it now? what's been the residual effect in it. This is all about discussion, you all, and I hope it's been a help to you. And I thank you, and I hope you'll be back for episode 8 next week. I have a guest, and we're going to dig into more people issues. So come back and see us.